So why isn't anyone asking more questions about Schiff's place at the center of the left's new Ukraine hysteria? To help us sort through all of this, I'm joined now by investigative journalist Lee Smith. He's also the author of the upcoming book, The Plot Against the President. Lee, you believe the Schiff involvement with Ukraine makes a lot of sense. How so?
Well, I think it's part of a larger pattern we've seen over the last 3 years regarding the entire Russiagate hoax operation. First of all, we have Christopher Steele, who we know is working for Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. We had the producers of the Steele dossier from Fusion GPS, and they were also working for Russian oligarchs. And of course, the press has picked up on none of these things. These are the different things that they turned a blind eye to, and instead they fabricate relations and alliances between the Trump team and all sorts of figures in Russia.
Well, I went back and I looked at some of the liberals who were writing about Schiff and this guy Pasternak, who did a couple fundraisers for him. Nothing illegal about doing fundraisers for him, but the liberals were kind of concerned that someone like Schiff would be the one they choose to go after Trump, because Schiff was at that time kind of a middle of the road, even if trending toward more of a, war. I think Raytheon Pack might have given him some money at some point. So the liberals were not all that wild about the idea of the Schiff character pushing the Trump narrative, because they thought he's kind of a pro-military expenditure, rah-rah, get more money over to these other governments. They weren't thrilled about that. What else have you found?
Well, he was running against Obama administration policy there. So insofar now that we see the Democratic Party is all in lockstep on Trump Russia and now Trump Ukraine, he was going against Obama administration policy regarding Ukraine and Russia at the time. Look, there's another issue as well with Mr. Pasternak, and I want to be very clear about this. I think it's something that we should start to look into and we should know about. But that, as you said, Mr. Pasternak started getting involved in started doing deals with the Ukrainian defense industry starting at the time that the conflict began in 2014. And now one of his projects with the Ukrainian defense industry is under investigation. It's not him and it's not his company itself, but it's the deal that's under an investigation in the Ukraine. And that investigation started July 22nd. So I just think that there are different threads that we need to pull out here and find out exactly what's going on, especially since Representative Schiff is throwing out a lot of baseless charges. But again, it would be interesting to know, since people are making so many charges about Ukraine and Russia, let's get to the bottom of it all.
Yeah, let's just throw all the facts out there. And it did seem that his focus became more Ukraine-centered after his Pasternak.
Well, this is another thing that I believe that probably Attorney General William Barr and U.S. Attorney John Durham, I believe that they must be looking into this. They must be looking into, we know that they're looking into foreign influence, and they're looking at certain countries. One of the other things that I suspect they're looking at is the different relationships that people who were involved in the dossier and Russiagate operation, what are the relations that they have with Ukraine? What are the relationships that they have with Russia as well? These are important questions, and again, I hope that they're getting to the bottom.
Yeah, again, Ukraine probably thought better for us to have Hillary win than Trump, because Trump was supposedly not going to spend as much money on the military, perhaps, be not so much of a war hawk. Hillary would be more of a war hawk, spending more money. That part of it kind of makes a lot of sense. Lee, we have to ask more questions. We hope we get more answers. But Igor Pasternak, I expect we'll see his name come up again. Coming up, as impeachment mania continues to sweep the nation's capital, there are alarming developments across the world. China unveiling a new supersonic weapon that our next guest says is a direct threat to our country. Meanwhile, Congress involved in an idiotic impeachment effort. Pillsbury explains in moments.
This program is sponsored by Safe Light Auto.
The police are firing in all directions, not just at protesters, but at media. They see us, too, as the target. The main crowds are down there. They're holding place, but in fact, right here, the police with water cannons and tear gas and rubber bullets want to get the crowd out.
That was Fox's Greg Palkot reporting as Communist China celebrates its 70th anniversary by brutally repressing protesters in Hong Kong. Now, the footage you're seeing now happened today. A police officer shooting a teenage protester in the chest at close range. That 18-year-old was one of dozens reportedly injured as tens of thousands took to the streets in defiance of Beijing. Here now, with me is Mike Pillsbury, China expert, author of the book, The 100-Year Marathon. Michael, this is called an anniversary by a lot of people. I think the president congratulated President Xi, but to me, this is nothing to celebrate. This is an anniversary of 70 years of oppression, suppression, and brutal crackdown on human rights at all levels.
Well, it's the 70th anniversary of the phrase that Chairman Mao used, that China should stand up. I think what we saw in that parade, what we see in the use of deadly force against the young demonstrator, is a country that's now almost surpassing our own. It's quite amazing to me. You and I have been among the few who were concerned up to 20 years ago, Laura. Most people really played down. China would never develop this kind of weapon system. China would be very nice and take advantage of the economics of Hong Kong. This just isn't happening. And thank God President Trump has been so heroic in his efforts. But the problem is the Democrats are undercutting him. And whether he can be credible with the Chinese when they get here next week, I'm very worried about. He's just getting too much attack from the Democrats.
Michael, nobody is talking about this, really. They're showing clips and so forth. This is potentially a cataclysmic sea change of world powers, and the balance of powers in the globe. They're our biggest adversary, and we're obsessing on Ukraine. They're our biggest adversary, and we think Russia's a problem. Russia's a teeny little pea compared to China. Their economy's tiny. They've depleted their own military. They're still adversary, but they're nothing like China. Tell us about this missile, why it's such a national security nightmare for our country.
Well, it's the idea that they had 20 of these missiles, a very old-fashioned, obsolete kind, for most of the last few decades. Now, suddenly, they've got 90. They're able to reach any target in America in 30 minutes or less. Each one can carry 10 H-bombs. That big round sort of nose cone you saw, the shape of that nose cone is that the 10 H-bombs can fit inside, and each one be separately targeted against an American city or a small town or an Air Force base. So that's one huge surprise, but there were several others in the parade. This just wasn't supposed to happen in China.
Well, and who's paying for those missiles? Who gave them the money to pay for the military weaponry, the advanced technology? They stole a lot of it, but who paid for it?
We did. Wall Street, basically, through investments. That's one thing they're very upset about. I don't know if you saw the day before the parade, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman was almost in a panic. The idea that President Trump might restrict the use of Chinese stock companies for investment and private equity. I mean, we provide a large amount of the capital that China uses for its growth.
Yeah, well,
that can be cut back.
Yeah,
no one's cut it back before.
We're giving them the rope to hang us with. Michael, we can do an hour on China, not impeachment. Thank you very much for your continued reporting on this. Absolutely. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Why do I still